You're listening to the free edition of the Start Teaching Guitar podcast, episode 58.
Coming to you from Colorado Springs, Colorado, the home of Pikes Peak. This is the Start Teaching Guitar podcast, a bi-weekly show dedicated to help you do music full-time and escape your day job through building a successful business teaching guitar. And here's your host, musician, guitar teacher, and small business coach, Donnie Scheck-Snyder.
Hey everybody, welcome to the Start Teaching Guitar podcast. I'm your host, Donnie Scheck-Snyder, and I'm here to help you be more successful as a guitar teacher by attracting more new students, keeping your existing students from quitting, and getting paid what you're really worth. The topic we're going to talk about today, it's actually an interview with Heath Nicholson, the creator of Riff Master Pro. You've probably heard of Riff Master Pro by now, but you may not know much about Heath Nicholson, the guitar teacher from Sydney, Australia, who created it. Heath is a successful teacher, a performing guitarist, and a business owner who has some excellent advice for new and established guitar teachers about how to be more successful. Heath was kind enough to take some time to share his thoughts about how to be a better teacher, how to use songs in your guitar lessons more effectively, and how to keep learning and growing as a guitar player yourself, and a whole bunch of other things that we ended up talking about in the interview too. This episode is full of some great wisdom from a successful teacher who knows how to do it right. Today's episode, oddly enough, is brought to you by Riff Master Pro. Since we're going to be interviewing the creator of Riff Master Pro, it's only fitting that I give you an opportunity to purchase it for yourself. So here's what it's all about. Being able to take a complicated piece of music and slow it down without changing the pitch is one of the most effective ways to figure out a song and to teach it on the guitar. Riff Master Pro is a software tool that runs on Mac, Windows, and your iPhone or iPad, and it does exactly what I just described. It takes your library of guitar music and turns it into a teaching tool to help your students learn better. It's almost like having some of the greatest guitar players of all time sitting in your teaching studio, showing your students how to play their most famous solos and riffs in slow motion, note by note. This cool software tool is going to help your students master any guitar solo, guitar riff, and the chords to any song faster than ever before. It'll help them improve their speed and technique through learning their favorite guitar solos, licks, or riffs note for note. It'll help them master difficult phrasing like never before. It'll help them learn any song, including the lyrics, quickly. It'll help them discover the magic of playing by ear, and it'll help them transcribe the music of any song they want to learn really fast. Riff Master Pro will let you slow down any piece of music to a pace you can understand and play without changing the pitch. It works with all of the major audio file types, including MP3s and WAV files, and it even has a built-in looping feature that lets you easily repeat a phrase again and again until your students know it. It's also a great way to transpose a recording into a different key without having to retune your guitar or relearn the song, which can save you a lot of time. You can even rip CDs directly into Riff Master Pro, and you can even save your slowed down loops and versions of songs for later use in your other lessons. If you want to find out more, just point your browser to startteachingguitar.com/Riff Master Pro to learn more and to download a 10-day free trial of the Riff Master Pro software today. Now let's jump right into the main topic. My interview with Heath Nicholson, the creator of Riff Master Pro. Okay, I have a special guest on the Start Teaching Guitar podcast today. It's a gentleman named Heath Nicholson, who's a guitar teacher from Sydney, Australia, and who's also the creator of the Riff Master Pro software. And Heath has been teaching guitar for over 20 years, and he's also a successful session player and performing guitarist. He's played thousands of live gigs, he does guitar repair work, and he's taught a considerable amount of classroom, workshop, and private guitar lessons too, on top of all that. So he's had a very diverse background with music and the guitar. And Heath originally created Riff Master Pro back in 2001 as a way to help his own guitar students become better musicians. And he was kind enough to take a little bit of time to visit with us on the podcast today to talk about it. So hi, Heath. Welcome to the Start Teaching Guitar podcast.
Hi, Donnie. It's great to be here. I really enjoy your shows. Fantastic stuff. As a guitar teacher, it's always good to get some more info and a little bit of insight. So I'm really pleased to be here, and I feel a bit honoured to be on your podcast. So thank you.
Great. Well, it's wonderful to have you. So let's start our conversation here. If you could just tell us a little bit about yourself, more about your background and how you got started playing the guitar and things like that.
Sure. Well, as you said, I live in Sydney, Australia. Great part of the world. I have been playing guitar since I was about 9 years old. I first started playing the guitar around about then, and I saw a guitar player on TV playing in a band, an Aussie band here called Hush. And I looked at that and I thought, well, you know what? That looks like a fun thing to do. I think that's what I want to do with my life. And I told my mum right then and there, that's what I want to do. And I've been pursuing that little 9-year-old dream from a 9-year-old ever since. And I just love guitar. I just love being around it. I've immersed my entire life around music and the guitar. And, I love the sound of it. I love the way they look. It's fantastic, and that's really how it started for me. And I went through the process of being taught, like many of us do, by formal and informal teachers. When I started learning, I didn't really have the benefits that guitar students do these days with YouTube and lots of other things online. And I just had a massive thirst for knowledge, really. I hope that answers your question for the beginning.
Yeah, it does. I think that's a common story for a lot of us growing up. It's like once the guitar bug bites, I know myself, as an example, I didn't have time for anything else, not for sports or,
Exactly.
Yeah, even girls sometimes. It was like, no, I'm not going to go out tonight. I'm going to stay home and play my guitar.
I know it.
Yeah. So let's talk about teaching guitar a little bit. You mentioned that you took some guitar lessons. How did you get started with teaching? And, are you still doing it? Can you tell us a little bit about your current operation and your program?
Sure. Look, I started teaching it for a couple of reasons. Being a guitar player in the beginning for a lot of us is not very lucrative. It's tough to get shows and it's tough to actually make money out of playing the guitar. So I did a lot of things that had to do with guitar because I thought that that's really what I wanted to do. So I looked at all the options that I possibly could do, which was playing in a band, playing in a covers band, playing sessions, and teaching was an option as well. And all of those things that certainly, at least when I realised this is really what I wanted to do with my life, teaching was the easiest option, and it looked like it was fairly good money. Certainly for the time it was for me when I was about 23 was when I really started teaching seriously. And how that came about was a few friends of mine asked if I could teach them to play. So I did it for a little bit and sort of cut my teeth, I guess you could call it, and worked out how I could teach and how, was it easy, was it hard, what did I need to know to teach. And then I did this crazy thing and I advertised in the newspaper, in the local newspaper, that I gave guitar lessons, and I've really never looked back since then. I did that one ad and it generated such a massive amount of inquiries for me at the time that I was constantly getting calls and referrals. And then going down to the local music store that had opened up in my hometown, I just asked them one day if they had a guitar teacher, and they said they did, but they were firing him, apparently because he didn't turn up a lot. So I put my hand up, and I started teaching there 6 days a week. Yeah, well, I opened 6 days a week, and I taught every single day, and I was teaching upward of 45, 50 students a week. Sometimes it was great. I really cut my teeth as a teacher then in those early years, probably between 23 to 26 for me. It was a great period of time because I really got to see what worked and what didn't for students. Now, fast forward to 20 years later, I teach a smaller amount of students. I teach about 15 to 18 students, really keen, hardcore students, rather than teaching an enormous amount of students. And how I do it these days is really I work with my students to find out exactly what they want before we go down the road of teaching them a whole bunch of material they don't need. So I'm very particular about the people that I teach, and I get them to be particular about what they want to learn. You know, we have to go through a certain amount of time where we will get some foundation things happening. I always make sure I work with my students to make sure their foundation is solid as possible so that everything can springboard from that. You know, I have a number of different things that I work with students that are across the board, that I'll always keep with students that I know that work now.
Okay. That's cool. I like the way you mentioned having that student-driven focus. That's been my experience too. I mean, you basically kind of have a spectrum of guitar teachers, and on one side you have people that like you and I that let the students' interest kind of drive the focus of the lessons, and I find that keeps their motivation level really high. And then on the other side of the spectrum, you have teachers that tend to kind of have more of a benevolent dictator approach where, they kind of drive things and say, no, you have to learn this. And, so that's a great perspective there.
Yeah, I went through that as well. I certainly went through that period of this is what you must learn. And that's where I learned well, sometimes that just doesn't work for students. The way I look at it is, to me, the guitar is it's a piece of wood with strings on it. To me, what comes out of the guitar, and I tell this to all my students, is them. Mm-hmm. Because the guitar without them is nothing. And if you consider that everything that comes out of the guitar, whether it be great, whether it sound awful, whether it be loud, whether it be soft, whether it be beautiful, it's all them, because they're creating the sound, not the guitar.
Yeah. So you mentioned a couple of, it sounds like pretty fortuitous circumstances, right? You mentioned the ad that you placed in the newspaper that got a tremendous amount of response, and then happening to walk into the music store at just the right time when they were about to fire the other teacher. So, I mean, besides, those two pretty big events, what's been the biggest key, do you think, to success with your guitar lessons so far?
Okay, good question. I think the real key is making sure that the students feel that they are actually moving forward, because over the years I've noticed when students don't feel like they're actually making any progress, they will get lazy and they perhaps won't practice, or they're not inspired. So what I see is my job, and has been the most successful thing for me as a teacher, is to, number one, inspire my students to want to play. There's always that they want to play because they wouldn't come in the first place. My job is to make sure that every time that they leave a lesson with me, that they, number one, feel like they move forward. and they had fun. Two that they had fun. So to me, it's like 80% of our lesson is about having fun or being inspired and enjoying the process of learning and playing the guitar. And then the other 20% is really the key factors of learning that we need to go through. So, and I've found that that's worked brilliantly for me, and it really does keep my students inspired, happy, willing to work, because they're enjoying it. And that's why we all pick up the guitar. From what I can tell, it's certainly why I did it. It's such a great thing an enjoyable thing to do.
Yeah, it's supposed to be fun, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah. So what are some ways that have worked for you to help keep things fun?
One of the things I do with students is we talk about a lot of different bands that they enjoy, and we'll often play quite a few of their songs. But I find that working with backing tracks and working with different techniques that they can, so we might do a couple of techniques that they need to work on to either get their chord changes, or they need to be able to get their picking correct, or play something a little bit faster than normal. But then we'll work on something that's completely out of left field. It might be just a simple guitar trick that sounds cool, or a technique that they can play to impress their friends. Just something to keep that fun element of playing. That's some of the things that have really worked for me, and I find I just develop a great rapport with a lot of my students. That's one of the things that I love about it, is that some of the students who started back with me back those 20 years ago and 15 years ago are still friends of mine today. I'll go and sit down with them and have lunch with them, and we talk about guitar or music or whatever. And they're still playing guitar, but they may not be visiting me as a student, but it's something that we still have in common. And it's such a great place to be, just having that fun about the guitar. And like I said, I've always been inspired by the sound of it, and I just love it. I just love guitar playing. It's great fun.
Yeah, it is, and that's one of the things that I love about teaching guitar is what you just mentioned. That it's just, there's so much fulfillment that you get out of being able to work with people and then see, we'll still know them, like you said, but see the results and the progress that they make on the guitar. Mm-hmm. 5-10 years down the road, and some of them actually doing music as a career, and just knowing that you were able to play a part in that. Absolutely.
I have two students who have, particularly two that I want to mention, who have gone on to make professional careers of their own. And one of these guys, he's in his mid to late 20s, I think, and he's in LA playing for a career, and he's sending me back pictures of him with Billy Gibbons from ZZ Top and Alice Cooper and a whole bunch of stuff, So he's just fantastic. He sent me a video. He was on the Letterman show recently. And to me, it's like, wow, there was a moment in time where I had a part of that success for him, and it feels good.
Yeah.
And another student who I remember one of the first lessons I had with him, he was attempting to play a open C chord, and his fingers were hurting so much he was in tears. And now fast forward 15 years later, he's a professional musician. It's crazy. It's
wow.
amazing.
Yeah, that's so cool. That's like I said, that's my favorite probably aspect of the whole thing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so you've had so far a very diverse career with music. I mean, everything from session work to the teaching side of it to live performance and a lot of other things. I'm sure there's been times in the past where things weren't always, going your way, and there might have been some discouraging areas too. And I was just curious, what kind of things help to keep you motivated to just keep going when things don't seem to be going as well as you would like them to?
Couple of things. I know the times aren't always brilliant, and that's the up and downs of life. You know, if life wasn't up and down, we'd probably we wouldn't enjoy it as much. What I find, two things in particular that I find is hanging about with people who are positive. That's number one.
Yeah.
You know, and unfortunately, I've found in the music industry there is, especially amongst players, there tends to be this pessimism, and I was never really interested in hanging around that. So I found a lot of people, and through various ways of personal development courses, and then found musicians who were more interested in being positive and working towards projects and being happy about them. That was a way of keeping me involved in making sure things went right. So it was goal setting. So if I wanted to, I wanted to have what I called gold level students. So I wanted to have people who were super keen, who were willing to spend the time practicing. And I wanted to have 10 gold students by the end of April, for instance. Then I would set about working down that road, and I would do it via referrals, or I would ask my current students, do you want to move to a gold level student? Do you want to be able to do this, and this, and create this? So that was one way. Another way was actually going and doing some guitar lessons myself, and keeping my hand in and being the student. So remembering what it's like to be a student, so that I could then turn that round and go and help my students. Just visiting teachers who, you know, there's always somebody who I find that's better than me as a guitar player. It's sad. It doesn't matter how good I get, there's always people who are better than me, and that's such a great thing, because then I can, you know, any of these guys who, you know, I've gone up and approached some people, and I've had a fistful of cash in my hand, and I say, please, will you teach me how to do what you do? And generally the waving cash under their nose generally helps them find some time. And a lot of the guitar players that I do ask are very busy players, and they're so willing, you know, that we end up just talking guitar for hours. And also, you know, they might only give me a couple of things that I can live on for the next year. You know, there's so much to learn, and that's how I do it. It's always learning new things is for me. That's what keeps me motivated.
Yeah, that's awesome. I actually encourage people to do that as often as they possibly can. And I've done other podcast episodes about that too, but that's one of the best ways to keep growing as a musician yourself. And like you said, it also gives you perspective as a teacher, because a lot of times you forget what it's like to sit in that other chair.
Yes.
Yeah, so taking lessons with someone else, it really it highlights the skills that you need to be a successful student, so that you can, you know, remind your students about that and kind of help reinforce it. But it also shows you what it's like to be a teacher from the other perspective. So very valuable.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. So we're going to shift gears here in a second. We're going to talk about Riff Master Pro, but I just had one more teaching question for you.
Sure.
We have a lot of people listening to the podcast who are kind of new at the whole guitar teaching game, and I was just wondering what advice you might have for someone who's thinking about getting started with guitar lessons for the first time as a teacher.
Yeah, for the first time, I think, you know, I jumped into it not really knowing what to do, because I thought, because I can play, then obviously I can teach. And that was not the case. I had to learn how to teach. It's very different than playing. My thoughts and my advice would really be to make sure that you can understand the basics that need to be in place, so that that the student can get where they want to get to. And one of the things I always do with all of my students, and suggest every teacher does, is really work out what the student knows, what they want to know, and what their goals are. Because then it's a lot easier for us as teachers to give them what they want so that they can have that fun time and feel like they're moving forward. It's always kind of like setting a little bit of a goal for them. And it is tough when you're first teaching for the first time, because there's this, am I good enough myself to impart knowledge to anybody else? That was always a question going on for me. Who am I to teach somebody else? And I look at it from, well, if I can add value to this person and help them even just a little bit, even if they only come to me for a few months and then they move to another teacher, or they look at something else, or they try a different style, whatever it is, if I can just give just a little bit of value, then that's a job done and happy with. So if you're starting for the first time, it's really looking at it from helping students. And even if you've never taught before, go and do some teaching for free. I did some community college teaching to classes, and that was a real eye-opener, because I had never taught a class before, and then I walked in and there were 30 people with guitars.
Wow.
And Donnie, I don't know if you've ever taught a class full of people before, but when everybody plays, it's mayhem.
I have, but not 30.
It was jumping into the fire. It was amazing, and again that taught me how to simplify stuff. So simplify it, and I guess make it process driven. So as much as guitar is an artistic thing, we have to be process driven. Technically, I guess, I talk about with my students, there's really only 3 things that we need to learn. And number 1 is technique, number 2 is theory, and number 3 is expression.
Yeah.
And the technique is all of that stuff that we need to get over, being able to move our hands to get into the right chord shapes, or play a scale, or the picking, or whatever it is that we have to coordinate. There's that stuff. And then the theory side of it, which scares so many students. And one of my things is breaking that stuff down so it's very, very simple to understand, because that's how I wanted it to be when I was learning. It was all way too this big mystery about theory. And then the expression, which really comes from, it can only come from us as a guitar player, and from our heart and from our head. And to me, there's a couple of things that, when I said to you before that the guitar is just a wood and a piece with strings on it, that's the music really comes from inside us. And I know that's kind of esoteric, and it's kind of but it's true. I can't. The more I see guitar players accept that, the better their playing becomes.
Yeah. Yeah, that's so true. It's really like I guess the way I've always thought of playing the guitar, it's always been kind of like an extension of your soul almost. You just, who you are as a person just comes out, when you express yourself that way. So I totally agree with you on that. Yeah, so let's talk about Riff Master Pro. Tell us a little bit about what the software is, just in case there are people listening who haven't heard of it before, and kind of how you ended up creating it.
Sure. Well, Riff Master Pro really is a basic software tool that's available for the Mac. It's available for Windows, and also we have it on iPhone and iPad as well at this stage. It just takes a music track and slows it down. That's really the basic premise of it, and retains the pitch. Now, the reason that I did that was because when I learned the guitar, when I was around about 13, one of the things that bugged me was everybody played so fast, and I could never play as fast as these guys on the record. So I came up with this brilliant idea on my father's old turntable. Do you remember those?
Yes, I do.
Starting to show my age, and this was great because I'd have these AC/DC records that I would save up my money and purchase, and I'd have these 45s on the turntable, and I was just sort of dragging my thumb along the edge of turntable and it slowed down. And I thought, oh, how can I get that to do that? So I would just put a bunch of coins on top of the middle of the record, and it would actually weigh the turntable down so much that it would slow the song down. So it would slow the guitar solo down. So, I could learn Angus Young's guitar solos from a lot of that early AC/DC stuff, which is what turned me on as a guitar player. Mm-hmm. And number one problem with that was as soon as I slowed that down, the pitch of the song changed as well. So I'd end up having to learn something way down on the bottom E string, but it was actually played, high up on the high E string and B string on the 12th fret or the 15th fret. But I had to play it all the way down on the open strings because that was how I heard it. And I thought, well, wouldn't it be great if there was possibility to slow something like that down without changing the pitch? So, cut a long story short, fast forward to technology that we can actually use to create that. And I went about with an ex-student actually, and we looked into the software development of how we could possibly do this. And we did this really because I just wanted it, for me, because I was playing in a lot of cover bands at the time, and I thought, well, if I could learn songs quickly and effectively, I could get more work. Mm-hmm. So we developed this very archaic little thing on a Windows machine, and it worked. It wasn't brilliant, but it worked. And I started to show my students, and it helped them. We had a few students who were testing it, and it was great. And then the further and further along we got, we decided to put more features in it. And again, cut a long story short, we kind of went down this road of developing more and more and more and more. And then, it's now on sale as a great product. And guitar players from hundreds of countries around the world actually buy this, as well as guitar teachers, to help their students as well. So just basic premise is that it'll slow a song down and retain the pitch so that we can learn something. So if we're learning an AC/DC solo, we can play it at 25% the speed of what Angus plays it at, but we can still play it in exactly the same position on the guitar neck and all the same notes. Just makes getting those notes and finding the pinpoint accuracy in them, and that's what it was about for me, just finding exactly what these guys were playing, and not trawling the internet for tablature that wasn't all that correct half the time.
Right. So since we're talking to guitar teachers here, I mean, this is obviously something that anyone who plays the guitar can use, but could you maybe give us some specific ideas about how maybe guitar teachers could use a tool like Riff Master Pro in their lessons?
Absolutely. Look, to me, ear training is the key. As a musician, if your ear is developed, then life is so much easier as a musician. It's more enjoyable as a musician as well. And one of the things that I did with a lot of my students with the software was, especially if they only had a half-hour lesson, I had a lot of young people who were coming in for half-hour lessons, and they'd bring me in a CD and go, hey, I want to learn this. And I went through that period of just working these songs out as quickly as possible on the Riff Master Pro. That was one way of doing it, so that we could cut down their learning window. So it was a lot quicker and easier for them to learn the songs. Mm-hmm. And therefore, they kept coming back to me, which was great, because they had an enjoyable time and they got to play the things they wanted to do quite quickly. That's what I found was very useful for it. It also has a loop feature that we could loop a certain section and slow it down a bit. So if a student was struggling with a section in a song, then we could take those 4 bars perhaps and loop that section and then slow it down a little bit, and then they could play along and then play along and then play along and then play along. And that's where I found it to be extremely useful. And then students then getting the software and then taking it into their own music or changing the key. That's another feature that we have involved in Riff Master Pro, that if we wanted to work on a backing track, say, that was in the key of B, but we wanted to move it to A for ease of playing, or any other key for that matter, we could quite simply do that with a couple of clicks of a mouse and then play in a different key.
Yeah, that's great. It's a really useful tool, sounds like. And I noticed, since you mentioned that you used it as a teacher, and you would also have your students would take it and use it as well, I noticed that you offer an affiliate program for Riff Master Pro, and that's something that guitar teachers could sign up for, and they could refer their students to your software, and through their affiliate link, and then that would be a way for them to be able for it to kind of pay for itself, right?
Absolutely, it's another income stream for them, really. Originally, when I made the software, I didn't even think that I would be out selling it. It was more or less for me and my students. And now it's become this entity of its own, and we started the affiliate program for that reason, so that teachers could go out there and resell the software, and they can offer it to their students, and they can make a little bit of commission on it. It's 50% commission, so whatever they sell, they get 50% of whatever it sells for. And currently the Mac version and the Windows version is $49 US retail.
Okay.
So the teachers, if they can put a link up on their website, or send their students to us directly, and we have our affiliate program through there. Any of your teachers want to be involved in that, they can contact me, and you can put up a contact address or whatever you'd like to do on the website.
Okay. Yeah, I'll put a link in the show notes for this episode to not only to the software itself, but to your affiliate program page, so that any teachers that are interested could check that out.
Absolutely. Thank you, Donnie. That'd be great.
Yeah. So I guess we're just about out of time here. Do you have any parting advice for the guitar teachers who might be listening today?
Well, parting advice. I feel like I'm wise. I don't know if I am. It comes down to me to a couple of things, really. I think as a guitar teacher and guitarist in general, that we forget sometimes how blessed we are. If we can do this for a living, and we can, whether we make a lot of money or not, I think it's a privilege to be able to teach. Teaching to me is also a great way of keeping my chops up, because it keeps me on my toes. I love getting students who are a bit of a challenge, who come in, and I can give them a whole bunch of stuff to work on, and then the next week they're done. It's great. Oh my God, I need to come up with something new for them to do, and that keeps me in the process. So if you can remember why you're doing it, and to me it's always about fun. It's about imparting some knowledge, and if every student, if we can, as guitar teachers, that every time a student walks out, that they have a smile on their face, that they've actually moved forward. That's where it is. Like we said before, it's seeing that improvement. That's the biggest thing, is that we're privileged to teach, and it's really about fun. And then if we can make a living out of it, then that's a super bonus for me.
Yeah, absolutely. Well,
and may I say, Donnie?
Yeah.
May I say before we finish, I think what you're doing is a fantastic thing for guitar teachers. There was nothing like this available when I first started, or at least there was nothing that I knew about. And I think that you being willing to share this information with other guitar teachers, it reminds us that we're not by ourselves, and that there's someone out there who's going through the same thing we are. If we're having trouble with a student, or we're having trouble with motivating students or motivating ourselves, that there's always different ways that we can get through that, and just having a bit of a community where we can talk to each other on this level, with that hey, this is what I experienced, this is what you experienced, and how we can help each other. I just think it's such a great thing, Donnie. So I'm going to be letting all my subscribers for Riff Master Pro know about your systems and what you're doing, because there's tons of guitar teachers out there that they would be so happy to just get a little bit of advice, even if it's just a small thing.
Yeah, well, I really appreciate the kind words, Heath. I mean, and that's really why I started doing this to begin with, is because I wanted to share what I've learned over the years, and we really are a community here at StartTeachingGuitar.com. So we're kind of all teaching each other. I mean, I've learned so much through my interaction with other teachers. So it's just like you said, it's all about the community aspect of it, and just doing what we can to share what we know.
Absolutely.
So yeah, I appreciate that, and I just want to say thanks for taking the time to be on the podcast today, Heath. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Donnie. Thank you for having me. It's been great.
Yeah, and just as we wrap it up here, if anyone is interested in purchasing Riff Master Pro, you can an easy way to get there is to go to startteachingguitar.com/Riff Master Pro, and that'll bring you directly to Heath's sales page. And I'll also have links in the show notes, like I mentioned before. So anyway, thanks a lot, Heath. I appreciate it.
Brilliant. Thank you, Donnie. I appreciate it too. Thank you, mate.
Okay, that's all for this episode of the free edition of the Start Teaching Guitar podcast. If you'd like to hear this episode in its entirety, full length, and without any commercials or advertisements, you can purchase your own STG All Access membership by visiting www.stgallaccess.com. STG All Access members get a full-length, ad-free podcast episode every single week, covering more detailed how-to topics, along with access to my notes and outline for each episode. Members also get access to the STG Podcast Archive, which includes the first 25 episodes of the podcast that are no longer available to the general public, and they get access to the STG Community Forums, where you can connect with me and other guitar teachers to ask questions and get help with building your teaching business. Just head over to www.stgallaccess.com to start your risk-free membership today. So I just want to thank everyone for tuning in to the podcast. I'm so glad that you could join me. This has been the free edition of episode 58 of the Start Teaching Guitar podcast with Donnie Scheck-Snyder. Until next time, keep on teaching.
Thanks for listening to the Start Teaching Guitar podcast with Donnie Scheck-Snyder. If you like what you heard, we hope you'll pass along our web address, www.startteachingguitar.com, to your friends and colleagues. Be sure to check out the podcast page on our website to listen to previous episodes of the show. Join us next time for another edition of the Start Teaching Guitar podcast.